Donna's World.
Hello everyone, welcome to Donna's World. Thank God it's Friday. Today I'm going to talk about a very controversial piece of legislation that is polarizing public opinion in the United Kingdom, where I grew up, and which is like my second home, or my first home really, because I'm currently in Nigeria, but I do shuttle between the two countries, and I take a keen interest in everything that's happening in England, Wales, Scotland, and Northern Ireland. So, last week in the British Parliament, the Assisted Dying Bill passed through the British Parliament in a kind of preliminary form. There are all kinds of technical and legal details which you don't really need to know within this context. And, you know, if you really want more information, you can easily get it on Google. So let me just say that the bottom line about this bill is that it allows mentally competent adults who have less than 6 months to live and who express a clear, settled, and informed wish to die to seek assistance in dying without breaking the law. So you can see why this bill has caused an uproar and endless debate, because, you know, it affects potentially every human being on the planet, really. I mean, because what happens in England or America often leaks out to the rest of the world. And this type of assisted dying option, it does already exist in a couple of other countries. And so it could happen to anybody. I mean, you know, we're all going to get old. Many of us, well, let me put it this way. If you don't get old, you're going to die young. And whether you die young or old, you or a member of your family, one of your loved ones, your husband, your children, your parents, whoever, could wind up with an incurable disease that puts them in a lot of pain, prevents them from doing anything for themselves. You know, so you could be immobile, you could be robbed of speech, you could be incapable of even picking up a cup of tea or a glass of water, and you might be in pain that you regard as unbearable. And many people who are in that situation, whatever, whether it's caused by disease or extreme old age or whatever, express a wish to die, but they are not allowed to, nobody's allowed to help them under the current laws of the United Kingdom. And I'm sure Nigeria and America and most countries, that's very much the case. In Switzerland, there's a clinic called Dignitas. It's very famous. And it is about 600 British people have gone there, because under Swiss law, you can go to Dignitas, it's, you know, if you've got the money, and you can be helped to end your life. I don't think euthanasia, it's, you know, these are really, it's very complex, this whole area of life and death. Euthanasia is when somebody else administers a lethal dose of some kind of toxin that ends your life. Assisted dying is where somebody gives you the means with which to end your life, because you're in a helpless position, maybe you're bedridden, and you can't get hold of the poison or whatever, the substance that will kill you off. So somebody has to do it for you. Now, under this new assisted dying bill in the UK, 2 doctors and a judge have to agree that the patient is mentally competent enough to make that decision and has not been coerced by relatives or anybody who might regard them staying alive as inconvenient. You can see there's so many different strands, so many issues wrapped up in this issue. For example, and like I said, it can happen in any family. I mean, some families are lucky, everybody sort of lives a nice life. Almost everybody lives a nice life and has an uncomplicated death. But in many families, there's somebody or people who are just dying slowly and painfully. And of course, in most countries, it's regarded as murder or manslaughter to either administer something that will kill the person off or give them something that will enable them to commit suicide. So, I mean, the way I'm talking, you might think that I actually approve of assisted dying. And the thing is, I'm torn in the sense that I totally understand that desire to end it all because it's too painful or too difficult. A few years ago, I don't know what happened, but I went through this very strange phase. I think it was stress related, whereby I just couldn't breathe for days. I could barely breathe, and I wanted to die. I remember I was in London with my mother and my sister, and I was too ill to climb the stairs to my bedroom. So I was lying downstairs on the sofa in the lounge, in the living room area. And every breath was agony. I couldn't even summon up enough oxygen. And I remember telling my mother, I just want to die. I can't bear this. I can't carry on like this. And then I was lucky, miraculously, whatever it was just sort of lifted. And I went back to breathing normally. Nowadays, if I'm breathless, it's because I'm too fat, and I'm not fit enough. But then there was something wrong. And I know what it's like to just go through unbearable discomfort. Now, I wasn't even in pain. Some people are in terrible, terrible, terrible pain, agony. So, I know what it's like. I also know what it's like from a psychological or mental point of view, to be so chronically depressed that you don't want to live anymore. I've been through that. So I've been through the physical thing of staying alive so difficult and both mentally and physically. And I've also experienced this thing about wishing death through my mother, who later became ill with dementia, severe dementia, and various other things were wrong with her. She had a lot of issues, and she lived with me for the last maybe 5 years of her life. And it was terrible to watch. This is a woman who had been vibrant, intelligent, feisty. And there she was, confined to bed, a bag of bones. We fed her very well, but somehow she never put on weight. She needed full-time nursing care. She couldn't talk. She couldn't smile. Her face was a mask of anguish. She could not go to the bathroom by herself. She could not bathe. She couldn't do anything, basically. So there she was, lying in bed, just looking awful and no doubt feeling awful. And we knew she was in pain because sometimes if you touch some of her body parts, she would flinch. And I cannot tell you how many times I said to that nurse, honestly, I wish I had the courage to give her an overdose and put her out of her misery. And the nurse, who was very religious, said, oh no, madam, please don't say that. And you see, now we come to the crux of the matter, religion. And I mean, there are different reasons to oppose assisted dying or euthanasia or anything that means ending another human being, ending someone's life or helping them end someone's life or helping that person end their life. But one of the most central arguments against it is that God, regardless of which religion you belong to, that God is the only person who has the power to give and take life. I think that Muslims and Catholics and Protestants and everybody in the mainstream religions believes that. The Catholic Archbishop of Westminster in London, which would have been, it's sort of like my spiritual leader in the UK. His name is Vincent Nichols. And he said that the right to die will become a duty to die if we allow this bill to go through. Because, the assisted dying bill hasn't yet been ratified, hasn't yet been passed into law. It needs to go through various legal and technical hurdles before it becomes a law, and it may not get there. That's why everybody is arguing about it, because the people who don't want it want to stop it from becoming a law. It's gone through a preliminary phase, but it hasn't reached the end of the process. And then the people who believe in assisted dying want to make sure they push it through and succeed in making it a proper law that applies to everyone. And like I said, the main reason to oppose this bill is the belief that only God has that power, and that no matter how much pain we are in or how much pain a loved one is in, we have no right whatsoever to say, you know what, enough is enough, give me some poison, I want to end my life, or go and buy some poison, I want to put my mother, I want her to escape from the awfulness she is going through at the moment. And of course, the reason I didn't do it is because I am a Catholic at the end of the day, and I just didn't have the courage to break that sort of like profound spiritual law, if you like. And also, of course, it's against the law, so if anybody had found out, if the nurse had ratted on me, I would have gone to prison for murder. And I've said to my son, sometimes, what a lot of people are also saying is you don't need to officialize these things. You don't need to make it permissible officially. Many doctors and nurses and relatives are quietly helping their patients or their loved ones who are in agony to escape this world and go hopefully to a better place, or at least to sort of ends the suffering. But they don't talk about it, and it does not need to be an officially sanctioned thing. I suppose when the nurse wasn't around, I could have gone to my mother and given her some drink or injection that nobody would have known anything about it, because she died here in Nigeria. We don't do postmortems here. Nobody would have found out if I had killed my mother, and with good intentions. But like I said, I personally did not have the courage to break the rules of my church, and it wasn't really a fear of being arrested for murder, because, like I said, I could have done it without anybody finding out. And I've said to my son, if I'm ever in the same position where I'm completely stripped of my dignity, I cannot go to the bathroom by myself, I'm miserable, I can't talk, and blah, 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 please just help me out, do something to end it all. My son says, absolutely not. So, he kind of cracks a joke like, hey, you want me to be arrested for murder, after you're gone? So, in my family, we've accepted that it's not the right thing to do. But in many other families, there are people who are no worse human beings than me, who do think that there's nothing wrong with assisted dying. When Archbishop Vincent Nichols, when he made that comment about the right to die becoming a duty to die, he kind of like, he was referring to another objection to assisted dying, which is not just the religious thing. It's also the fact that if you've got somebody who's very ill, they can be taking up a lot of emotional resources and financial resources. They might be living in a spare room in your house. They can't speak. They can't contribute to the household in any way. They're costing a lot of money. It's a hassle. And there's a big fear amongst opponents of assisted dying that the next logical step will be people trying to get rid of relatives who have outlived their usefulness, and sort of say, okay, fine, enough is enough. And under the British proposals, the person has to say, I want to die, okay? You can't just go to the doctor or the judge and say, look, I've had enough. My dad's been ill for 15 years and he's not getting any better. So, can you help me? Can you help me help him die? No. Your dad or whoever has to say, I want to go. And what the Archbishop was referring to, I guess, was that some people are going to feel that they've caused their families enough inconvenience. And some people are going to request death, not because they really want to die, but because they don't want to be a bother to anybody anymore. So that's one of the fears. And it's sort of like, it's a very difficult thing. So as I said, I know how people who support assisted dying feel. I personally think at the end of the day, it should never be made law in any country. I think when I think about myself, if my breathing problem hadn't been resolved and I had continued to gasp for air or had some more serious sickness, would I be bitter that I couldn't end it all? And the answer is yes, I would want to go, but I don't think that anybody should be allowed to help me go. And I suppose, I know in the Catholic Church, I think suicide is a sin as well. So even if somebody doesn't help you, I think it's even a sin to take your own life because of this idea that life is sacred and that, again, it belongs to God. It's not yours to take away. You can't even take away your own life because it doesn't really belong to you. And again, under the British proposal, they say you have to have only 6 months to live. But then some doctors say, how would you know? They're always making mistakes about how long terminally ill people have to live. Sometimes they say someone's only got 6 months to live and then they live another 3 or 5 years or another 12 or 13 months. Sometimes, I had a friend, a very, very dear friend who died in the summer this year. She was told in January or February that she had 12 to 18 months left. And so, we planned a wedding for her daughter this summer that's just passed, thinking, well, at least she'll be able to see her daughter married off to the love of her life. And guess what? My friend didn't make it to the wedding, because she lived shorter. The time the doctors estimated was wrong. So doctors are human, and the human body is also a very unpredictable thing. And, they don't always get it right about how long you're going to be around for. So it's kind of strange to have a law that's based on the arbitrary, haphazard assumption that someone's only got 6 months left to live when they might have less and they might have more. Another thing is that someone can say they want to die, they can say they want to be helped to die, but they may not be as compos mentis as they look or sound. A lot of people who are walking around sounding like normal are actually going through all kinds of mental turmoil, and nobody knows that they're not quite right upstairs until you've been with them for a prolonged period of time. And the doctors and the judges don't have to be with patients for a prolonged period of time, so they have no idea really how cognitively sound the people who express a desire to die are. So, I've raised some of the issues. You're in pain, it's intolerable, you can't breathe. By the way, you may ask why I wasn't put on oxygen when I was going through that breathing crisis. Oh God, it's such a long story. I won't even talk about it now. Part of it was that the doctor thought it was psychological. The doctor I consulted when I first started getting breathless thought it was psychological. And it may have been, who knows? Because it did go away after a while. So, hey. So, what I would like is for Donald's World readers to join in this debate, because like I said, it could happen to anybody. Would you be willing to pull the plug on a relative or friend who didn't have long to go, and who was suffering and who wanted to go? Do you think people should be allowed to do that? Or do you think that for religious reasons or reasons around ethics like, you know, putting pressure on sick people to say they want to go to spare their relatives inconvenience. Do you think that law should never happen for that reason or for any reason? I would really, really like to know what you think about this. And in the meantime, as much as and another thing I was going to say before I sign off on this topic is, you know, there are other issues that are all about whether life is sacred, whether the government should have any right to take life or give permission to give it or take it or whatever. And the whole abortion thing is another side of this debate. And I must tell you, I'm very hypocritical because I actually I think abortion is a terrible thing, but I think it should be allowed in cases of rape or whatever. Well, not whatever, but I don't think that women should be forced to give birth to babies they don't want under all circumstances. So if I believe in abortion, and why wouldn't I believe in assisted dying? It's all the same thing. It's doctors or the government deciding who should live and who should die. Of course, some people would say a fetus is not a person, but that's another argument for another day. Maybe we'll do something about reproductive rights in a later episode. And then also, like I said, there's suicide, there's euthanasia, there's also capital punishment. Do you believe in the death penalty? Do you think the government has a right to decide that a wicked person who has committed a terrible crime should be executed? Again, there are a lot of people who say no. That person may be very wicked, but it is only God who can take life, not the government, not doctors, not prison officials, okay? So are you, like me, inconsistent, where you believe in one but not the other? Like maybe you believe that suicide shouldn't be a sin, but you think assisted dying is a sin. Or maybe you believe in the death penalty, but you don't believe in abortion. So, you know, these are all very important issues for us as human beings. They're moral issues, ethical issues, medical issues, practical issues, and I'd love to hear your opinion. So thanks for that in advance. Let's look at some viewers' voices. There is people who have responded to the YouTube video I posted last week, which was about, I interviewed my sister Layla about Kamala Harris's defeat in the American presidential election and Kemi Badenoch, a Nigerian lady, becoming head of the British Conservative Party. I chose my sister because she happened to be in America when Kamala lost and happened to be in the UK when Kemi won. So she had a good overview on, these are two black women, the most high-profile black women in the world right now, I guess. So these are responses to last Friday's Kemi Kamala chat with my sister. Well, Sybil Essie 1548 loved the interview and says that intelligence runs in my family. Thank you, Sybil. Very sweet comment. Then there's Bolale Musa, who also said very nice things and loved my sister's discourse on Kamala's defeat and Kemi's win. And Bolanle says it's interesting to know that people all over the world need leaders who can speak to those things that support our survival, like food, decent housing, and a functional income. Majoring on minors are always divisive. Thank you for bringing your sister on as an objective observer. Very stimulating session. Because my sister was very objective, even though she's like me, as in she supported Kamala, you know, as a black woman, cool black woman in our opinion. She could see why some people did not support her. And she said so in last week's video, which is worth going back and listening to if you didn't catch it, if you haven't caught it so far. Then Mary Jane Wilston says, I don't care if the president is black, white, Asian, or Hispanic. I am Catholic and I am pro-life and especially against late-term abortion. I am a widow on a fixed income and struggling with food prices getting so high here in the USA. Love you and your program. God bless you, Mary from Florida. So Mary, God bless you too. I totally get where you're coming from on this abortion issue. I think, you know, I completely empathize with you on a moral level, but on a practical level, I veer more towards Kamala and those who believe in reproductive rights. You know what? I think we're going to do a different program on abortion very soon, maybe even next week, okay? And then we can talk about some of these things. And we are at some point going to do a lot, what I call live streaming, where people actually get the chance to call in and talk and argue with me. And that should be quite good fun if we're ready for a good argument, or even for a love fest, because hey, we might all agree at the end of the day. So then there's Tonio6710 wrote a very long, well-written and well-considered comment, which covers several issues around this whole thing about Kemi and in London, in England, Kemi, in the United Kingdom, becoming leader of the British Conservative Party despite being a black woman of Nigerian origin. So Tonio points out that the Labour Party has been a haven for black and ethnic minority support, but hasn't done much in the way of elevating blacks to prominent cabinet positions. That is so true. You are so right, Tonio. And then it says, I'm skipping parts of the comment because it's so long, and I think it's well worth reading, and it's worth hearing everything. So if you've got the time, go to my YouTube page and read the whole comment properly. It says, as for Kemi, she says something a lot of folks, black, brown, and white, are thinking but not saying, to prevent the politically correct brigade coming for them. The Conservative Party has showcased a flurry of black and other ethnic minority individuals. The Labour Party has failed to do this. And then, lots and lots of other good points. And one or two comments about Trump. And it ends with the long and short is that the parties, both the Labour Party in the UK and the Democratic Party in America, because they are the equivalents, because like American Republicans are like British Conservatives, so American Democrats are like British Labour Party. And they say the Labour Party and the Democratic Party cannot take ethnic minority votes for granted, because ethnic minorities are a diverse group, okay? And some of them have capitalist leanings and are not left-wing at all. Then there's Emma J. Music. Emma is one of my regulars, doesn't like Kamala, finds her irritating, but thinks she could get behind Kemi. And is about to read Melania Trump's latest book. Seems to be a great fan of Melania. Describes her as a strong, intelligent, and independent woman who does not always agree with her husband, yet remains loyal to him. And then pays me a compliment, says I was looking quite relaxed. Thank you. Back to this issue of Melania. I have such mixed feelings about Melania. But number one is, how could anybody be married to him for more than 5 minutes? But hey, I know all you Trump supporters are going to jump on me for saying that. But my main problem with Melania is that she's married to him. She seems fine by herself. Then Summer Lake 356 says, I think Kamala is awful, but Kemi seems okay. Like me, she was surprised that the British Conservatives elected a black woman to lead them. So let's wait and see whether she succeeds or fails, says Summer Lake. I agree. And then another very long one from Topman 1868, and says that Kamala lost because the policies she pushed forward did not appeal to the majority of Americans. Well, clearly, though some people think it's because she was black or she was a woman, but that argument is dicey, I agree. She says, people are suffering economically in America, and Kamala's central policy was reproductive rights, but Tubman feels that there were more important things to the American people at that point when they had to go into the polling booths and vote for a leader. And thinks Kamala was a disaster when she was in charge of the border, and just generally not a fan of Kamala, totally understands why she lost, and we'll have to disagree on that. But I'm really grateful to you for sharing your opinion with me. And that's all for today. Don't forget to tune in next Wednesday if you're interested in my self-improvement journey around mental health and physical health and weight loss. And of course, if you're more interested in general topics like assisted dying or politics, I'll see you next Friday. Thank you.